What's going on, everybody? This is Mazique, aka UniqueMazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming, and we're back with another episode of At Me Bro. And I'm here with my man, my co-host, Nelson Blake, aka Books. Nelson Blake II, aka Books. What's going on, man?
How's it going, Brian? How you doing today? Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, holiday special.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Same to you, sir. Yeah, we are blessed to be here, everybody. You know what I mean? If you're here able to talk, if you're here able to listen, if you're here able to see, you know, you're fortunate. It's somebody that don't have those senses available to them right now. So it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. I hope everybody got what they wanted for Christmas. And if you didn't get it, I hope you're still hopeful that you're going to get it next year or something. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Click the subscribe button now. Also, if you haven't liked this video, do that now. Just trust me, you're gonna like it. I know we just started, but just trust me. Just trust me, you're gonna like it. Also, we're still hunting 10,000 cumulative views for the for this show itself and the segments. So what we want to do is ultimately we're going to branch it out and have At Me Bro have its own YouTube channel. So that's something that's still a goal. So if you can help assist in doing that by liking the video, sharing the video, so on and so forth. So we appreciate all of that support. Let's jump into our first topic, which is something that I'm going to talk about. There's a lot going on with this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let y'all in on a little bit of some show secrets, right? Each segment is supposed to have a certain time limit, but I could see how this one might run over. I can see. So I'm preparing my producer, which is my lovely wife, that this one has run over potential. So UFC 232, it's the year-end show for the UFC, the largest mixed martial arts promotion in the United States for sure. John Jones is coming back from his latest suspension. He was cleared by the California State Athletic Commission to participate. Now, this event was originally scheduled to take place in Las Vegas, but John, now I don't want to say he tested positive because that is clearly Jeff Nowitzki, who is the anti-doping specialist with UFC, and Dana White they very much want you to know that he did not test positive again. But what was found was microscopic traces of turinabol in his blood and urine. And from what we're told, turinabol, of course, is the same drug that he tested positive for when he got his most recent suspension, which came after he defeated Daniel Cormier the second time. But it was deemed that at that time, the amount of turinabol that was in his blood was so small, there was no way that he had done it intentionally or that he had any athletic advantage over Cormier. But the thing about turinabol is that turinabol stays in your body for up to 3 years because it stores itself in your fat and throughout other aspects of your body. So most were told that there's a possibility that he could, throughout tests moving forward, you could still see traces of turinabol in his body for up to 3 years after this, right? So, but because of that and the confusion, Nevada State Athletic Commission, which is where the UFC 232 was supposed to take place, they would not give John Jones a license. According to Dana White, you take this with a grain of salt, take this for whatever you think it's worth. He said that if there were more time, they could have gotten John Jones clear for Saturday. But because they didn't have enough time, they decided to move the event to California, to the Inglewood, the Fabulous Forum, former home of the Lakers. And so because he was cleared in California State, so it's in California, so bam, bam, there, it makes sense to them. I understand that. I do, to a degree. But the manner in which the UFC has handled this is just classic UFC type of garbage. It really is. First of all, they did not call and notify the other fighters on the card.
I heard they found that on Twitter.
They were finding out on Twitter.
That's so classless and horrible.
That is classic UFC. They were finding out. So myself as a MMA writer for Forbes and for Heavy.com, myself, other writers within the sport, Ariel Helwani. I mean, all of the people who, you know, I'm not putting myself in that category, but all of these, the main names in terms of MMA media are all discussing this situation, and fighters are like literally chiming in like, what? Wait, what? Like, so we know their business before they do.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy. I'm talking about Chris Justino, who is arguably the greatest female mixed martial artist ever. And she's the co-main event on the card, fighting Amanda Nunes. She finds out on the internet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not only are they inconvenienced, I mean, not only is this happening and they're not finding out or whatever, not only are they inconvenienced by having to move their camps. So the final week and a half, whatever their final prep, whatever that looks like for them. Usually a fighter comes into town where the event is going to be the same week of a fight, and they do their last, you know, the rest of their weight cut, and everything just all comes down to a head within the same state, right? So all of these fighters had this plan as they normally would, and the UFC all of a sudden, just like that, drops everything, changes everything because of John Jones. And this, I don't think this is really his fault this particular time, but it just doesn't look good to fighters. It doesn't look good to fans. It doesn't look good to other organizations. It just doesn't look good. And I mean, it's insane, man. John is like that kid, right? In high school, who has done a ton of stuff. No, not even in high school, in grammar school, who has done a ton of stuff wrong, right? And he does so much wrong that even when some trouble happens that is technically not his fault,
right, he still gets the same.
He still gets the blame because he's always the one doing something anyway.
So what do you say to the people that say this is BS, this is all covering up for the fact that he juiced again? Do you think that's totally out of line?
I do, because the thing of it is, I think it's people not really knowing the details of his of the test that he's failed in the past.
Can I jump in on that real quick? Because I think that's an excellent point. And I hate to start the show off agreeing with you, but unfortunately, I think you are correct in this one. Back in the 1980s, when steroids was huge with bodybuilders and football players, not saying it isn't now.
Oh, right.
But when it first came out, what they were, what they did, and so on and so forth, because guys have obviously been juicing for a while and they really cracked down. There was this, I don't want to say caricature because it actually is true for some people, but there's this one image of steroids that people had where it was basically you take roids, you get massively gigantic, like the baseball players did. You get the back knee, you start beating up your wife and kids, you're super aggressive all the time. Yeah. And you know, and you just is a super soldier serum. Turns you into Venom. Right? Yeah.
Like the defensive lineman on the program. Remember the movie The Program?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, and there was a lot of stuff that came out about that stuff, and rightfully so. But the thing is, nutrition and supplements have changed and evolved so much over time that I think people go in with the mentality that all steroid uses, all steroid tests are created equal. When the truth of the matter is that the science is extremely complicated. Yes. And while we can both agree, look, it's you and your camp's job to make sure that whatever you take doesn't have this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I get that. And I get that 99.999% of the time that someone's juicing and they get caught, they lie when they get caught. I get that too. But at the same time, I think that cartoony idea of steroids and people, you know, rubbing deer antlers on their knees,
Yeah.
All that stuff is a little, what happens is when people hear information, they process it through that filter and they don't understand that this is actual science. And there are things that are not banned one year that are banned another year. There's a whole bunch of stuff that me and you can legally take. Our doctor will say is good to take that these guys can't take because they feel it's giving an advantage. And there's some stuff that's giving them an advantage that's totally okay. Like, we don't understand all of the minutia of this stuff. Most people had never heard the word picogram before this came out right now. Right. And if you understand the math and science of a picogram and how small it is, I saw this one discussion where we were talking about, they confuse the half-life of a substance with the trace amount detection of a substance.
Yes.
Which scientifically is idiotic. That's like confusing a stain and a smell.
Yeah. But the thing of it is, if both terms are foreign to you, it's easy to get confused.
Exactly. And so while I totally understand the ideas, it seems to me more implausible when you look at all of the people talking about the science of it and what has happened, and the fact that this has actually happened to other people. In fact, we talk about Lonzo Tree. I believe that's what happened to him.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It's exactly. It's almost exactly.
It's basically exactly the same thing. And the science agrees on that. Like, no one is saying that that's not what happened. That's not something that his quote unquote camp, when he was an NCAA player for Arizona, when he was a freshman and sophomore for Arizona, nobody was coming out defending him with like a John Jones MMA USADA conspiracy to defend this kid. That's just what the science says. So people say, why doesn't this happen to other people? Actually, it does happen to other people, and it has happened. But testing is constantly evolving. These processes are constantly evolving. And speaking of the process, I want to ask you about this. So in Hollywood, people know I work for Marvel Comics, and as a guy who works for Marvel, I have a lot of friends who work on films and TV shows. And one thing that is famously true about Hollywood is no matter what you have going on, because the positions are so specialized, that when the holidays come around, the one person who can get a deal done might just be on vacation. And it seems like what Dana White was saying was that because this happened around the holidays, and you can't just pick a athletic commission judge up off the street, off reserve, we physically could not get this worked out. And so we had to scramble. And it almost seems like they thought they might be able to get it worked out, but heads just didn't show up to be able to go over the information, because it just is a process. And that process can't happen over the holidays when there's only but so many people that could do it, and then people's on vacation. Right.
And here's the thing. John Jones and Dana White are in very much the same situation, right? So the reason why people, like, in conjunction with people's just general ignorance about this topic, right? One of the reasons why people are so quick and so ready to jump against John and to blame him and say, oh, you messed up again, is because you have literally messed up with indisputably negative drugs. Like, you've been on cocaine, you've been an alcoholic, you've been involved in a DUI where you had a hit and run with a pregnant woman and you ran off and left the scene. Like, that's happened to you, right? So now when this goes on, especially from with a bunch of people who don't know the difference about anything, they hear the word drugs, they go, yeah, oh, he did it again. Same thing with Dana White. Dana White lies so often. He sells crap so often that now he sits up and says, oh, it's the holidays, we couldn't get anybody to Everybody goes, oh no, that's just Dana with some more crap. This is a conspiracy. You did this to hide the fact that he did that, because there's a lot of people, and it's starting to come out even more, who believe that the entire Conor McGregor bus attack thing was a orchestrated publicity stunt. I said that back then. But now Michael Chiesa, one of the fighters who was injured during the attack, his attorney says that he has proof that that's what this was. So that's part of their civil suit against Conor McGregor now. So they better hope something happens. There's a massive payoff that goes on there, because I don't think that's anything that the UFC or Conor McGregor wants to have unearthed. So that kind of thing, and Dana White being involved or associated with that kind of thing is one of the reasons why people don't believe him either.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so crazy, man. I was talking to my wife yesterday. Well, actually, I told you this holiday thing has a nights going super long. So it was actually this morning. We were talking about the dynamic between John Jones and Daniel Cormier,
Mm-hmm.
because John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, which is who he's fighting on Saturday, it's a rematch of his toughest fight. It's the only fight I've ever seen John in that I'm not sure that he won. Right. It's the only one.
He won, but I understand that.
Yeah, it's the only one I'm not sure that he won. Right. Because it was wow. It was one of those fights. Right.
Just to clarify real quick, I want you to hold your point. But when you say you don't believe he won, you mean that in turn, because there's two ways to win a fight. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's the fight and then there's the match. The match is based off of scoring.
Right.
I can understand how that would be in dispute.
That's the only way I think. I don't think about that.
It's pretty clear John Jones beat him up.
Well, I don't know, because John Jones beat him up in the 5th round. But if you say for instance,
in the 4th round
at the end of the 4th round, but say for instance, you didn't see the fight, right? Yeah. And you just saw the two guys after the fight, you would think that Gustafsson won.
I actually think well, I don't agree with that, but I actually think that is why people think Gustafsson won, because the nature of that fight was that John spent most of his time attacking Gustafsson's foundation, just attacking. He didn't attempt to punch Gustafsson in the face as much as Gustafsson attempted to punch John in the face.
Well, he did more than attempt. He succeeded on a number of occasions.
What I'm going to say is that Gustafsson did a lot of surface damage to John, and John did a lot of foundational damage to Gustafsson. But I think we have a heavy prejudice towards surface damage, and I think that warped the outcome of the fight, because I watched it several times to really get a clear look. And I don't think as a fight it was that close. As a match, it was close, because the first 3 rounds you could have a lot of debate about. I think John won the 4th and the 5th, but there is a valid perspective to say that Gustafsson won the first 3 rounds. I don't agree with that perspective, but I think it's valid. But as a fight, I don't think the fight was as close as people thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as a match, as a match, okay, John did the most eye-popping damage in the last round, because he literally almost finished him, right? Yeah. At no point did Gustafsson almost finish John. At no point, right? So but I never judge fights that way, because I know how fights are supposed to be judged. Yeah. People like to judge fights like the same way they would judge it if they were watching it in an alley, and that's not the way you do it.
Correct. I think it's a factor, though. I think, and that's why. And
I think it's only a factor for people who don't. I think it's only a factor for people who don't understand.
Well, that's why they have significant strikes, because significant strikes is to include the idea that if one guy pity pats another guy for 40 punches, and another guy rocks your face 3 times in a row, we can't grade it like it's legitimately 40-3, when we know that, especially according to styles and the way you win a fight, you might sacrifice points for damage in order to get what you want. And I actually do think that is a part of the factor of John and Gustafsson in that first fight. Although I totally agree that this is one of the most challenging fights he had.
It was absolutely his most challenging fight.
Yeah, and I think that I do think it was close on the scoring, but I do think that John made some clear sacrifices. And this is where I would disagree with you. I think the 4th round should definitely be included, because first of all, I think John won the 4th round hands down. It's just it took place in the last minute and a half or so, and he hurt him really bad in that 4th round. And I think the reason he hurt him that bad was he built up to it. He didn't just catch him. The work that he put in the first 3 rounds, beating up his legs, spin kicking him to the body constantly, it did slow Gustafsson down in many ways. And I think John was also figuring him out. And I've seen Hopkins do that. And Hopkins would almost lose a fight on points because he was sacrificing 5 rounds clean on just downloading data on his opponent and then hope he scored enough in the end. So, I wanted to get your opinion on that. What was you going to say about Cormier and their relationship?
Well, Before I do that, let me just kind of close my point with close a rebuttal on the Jones Gustafsson thing. Jones Gustafsson to me, I think is very similar to who's a fight? Which fight can I guess it doesn't really compare to. I was trying to find a Floyd Mayweather fight where there was a strong contest for him. But he still won the fight. Like I think that you could make a case, right? I think that you could make a case that Gustafsson won the 2nd through 4th round. I think you can make a case. Now, I don't think that Gustafsson got robbed. I don't think that at all. So I don't think that at all. I mean, because if you just look at like significant strikes throughout the entire, and first of all, let me also say this. This is what I really meant to say. Significant strikes itself is a conceptually good statistic, but it's flawed in many ways in the way that it's calculated. Like, I think conceptually it's a good statistic. Overall, scoring in MMA is flawed, period. Right. And I would say it's just basically essentially flawed in most combat sports, period. The whole concept of 10-9 and what constitutes a 10-9 and what constitutes a 10-8 is flawed. Because what happens is in a fight, in a mixed martial arts contest, you have two guys battling, right? And you have 1 or 2 rounds that are pretty close. But one guy might get the edge just simply because he was pressing forward a little bit more. Right. So then you get the 3rd and the 4th round and you get the other guy clearly win the round. Now, he doesn't knock him down, but he clearly wins the round. He lands
10-9.
And they're both 10-9.
Right.
And now at the end of 4 rounds, you have an even fight on the scorecards, but you clearly don't have an even fight to the eye because the one guy did far more damage without a knockdown than the guy did. So that right there in itself is really flawed. And it also comes about in other ways, like the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight is the same, is a good concept, right? Mm-hmm. Tyson Fury should have had a bigger lead over Deontay Wilder than he had because many of those rounds early he won by a more clearly than Deontay Wilder did. Now, Deontay Wilder definitely, if you knock a guy down, technically that probably should be 10-5.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you because there's not enough room to really accurately judge the fight. Because here's the thing, to kind of put it into almost math terms. If I outpunch you 50-30, I get a 10-9 round. Mm-hmm. If I outpunch you 50-10, I get a 10-9 round. unless you knocked me down, unless you had me staggered on the ropes or whatever, which is absolutely it's ridiculous. In fact, I could have even said 50-45, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, like you said, you have this feeling out period where they're both figuring each other out, and really nobody should get a round.
No, right. And that's the thing. It's considered, taboo to score a round even. Yeah. When in actuality, there's a lot of rounds that should be even because nobody gained a competitive advantage.
Which and because we admit that there's a lot of wriggle room in this. Mm-hmm. That's why I distinguish between the match and the fight.
Yes,
I heavily disagree with you on the 4th round. I would love for you to. I would almost like to watch the 4th round with you again. Mm-hmm. But I think John won the fight in that 4th round. He figured him out late in that 4th round. He hurt him late in that 4th round. And in the 5th round, he moved to it again. And here's the point for the fight coming on, even though we don't want to get into predictions just yet. I feel like John, the way he approached the camp is why he didn't finish the fight. I don't think it was Gustafson was why.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. John is a better fighter than Alexander Gustafsson. He is. Gustafsson poses him a different threat because of the length. And John has to fight him different than every other person that he fights because there is no other light heavyweight that he's faced yet that has that type of length and athleticism because Gustafsson's not just a big guy. He moves well.
He's quick. He moves great. And actually, I will give Gustafsson credit on one thing. I think his punching skill is ahead of John's punching skill.
He's a more natural striker than John.
I would say puncher specifically.
Puncher, yeah, I would agree with
elbows
that.
and knees.
Yes,
and
he's a more
kicks, and John has the whole deal. But when John decides to sit up there and box him, it's not a good look for John.
So. It's not. I
think John knows that now.
No, that's exactly my point. I think that through the first 3 rounds, he tried to box.
Yeah,
too much. Not totally.
I would say too much, because my point is that the reason the 4th and 5th round went the way they went is from when he didn't try to box. All the work that he did as a kickboxer, as a Muay Thai fighter, that stuff was good for John.
Yes.
And paid off later on.
Gustafson as well is a guy who later in fights has traditionally had a fall off. Gustafson is a world beater for 2 rounds.
Yeah.
3rd round on, so he hasn't had a ton of 5-round fights, but 3rd round on is when you start to see a little bit of a slowdown. I'm sure John probably knew that, which was the reason why he had the foundational attack, which is why you kick the legs. It's just why you go to the body.
Take him into deep waters and then.
And also, John probably also knows that while we're the same height, or we're close in height, he's actually a half inch taller than John.
Yeah.
My legs are longer.
Right.
And which
use your legs.
I'm going to use my legs to use the spin kicks. So it's not that I'm questioning. I mean, you never know what's going, because I don't know which John Jones we're going to see on Saturday, because he's a human being, and you can only go through these really serious issues, life issues, so often before it starts to affect. So I'm hoping that he's okay. But if John is John, he's going to stop Gustafson Saturday.
Okay, so
if he's John,
stop him. I do think it's highly possible that he stops him, particularly because my overall assessment is they both had some back and forth in the first 3 rounds. A lot of ways you can interpret that. And because there's a lot of ways you can interpret that, I'm not going to debate it, because I think every side has a valid case because of what we discussed earlier. There's wiggle room. It's not an exact science. But the 4th round, I felt like John figured him out from a technical standpoint. And what I mean by that is John saw Gustafsson's angles differently. It wasn't just that Gustafsson was tired or slower. I actually credit Gustafsson. He was in great shape and was still moving well. But I think John legitimately saw the holes.
Yeah, definitely.
In the 4th round. I think because John was so out of shape, and I mean, because he was a little chubby in that fight.
Yeah, he had tied on a ridiculous hangover, and he said it. He was like, dude, he was like, I got blacked out drunk.
Yeah. And he looked like.
Yeah.
So it just everything, all of his gestures. But when you look at John's eyes in that fight, he was looking at Gustafsson's movements totally differently in the 4th. It wasn't just the fatigue thing, because I agree with you about taking him into deep waters and all that stuff. So I think now that John's taking him seriously and taking himself seriously, I do think that Gustafsson's such a capable striker. I don't think John's going to like maul him necessarily. But I think even if the fight plays out exactly the same from a technical standpoint, just John having better training, he'll finish him in the 4th.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's going to look competitive.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
If he's John, I don't think it's going to look competitive, because this dude is so freaking gifted.
Yeah.
In every way that there is where there is value as a fighter. He is built different, physically built different.
Yeah.
He sees fights differently in the midst of them than most people. And he is a real athlete. Yeah. A lot of mixed martial artists aren't athletes. They're trained fighters.
Right.
But if you have a trained fighter who is also a world-class, I mean, it's literally in his genes.
Yeah, he has everything.
He has 2 brothers in his family that play in the NFL. Yeah. It's in his genes that to be an athlete. And he has the mind of a fighter. This is the reason why he's like the perfect storm as a fighter. So if he's plugged in it's not going to be competitive, and he's going to punish him because of some of the things that are being said. And John, John was on Twitter last night. And I'm gonna get to the Daniel Cormier thing in a second, because this is a good segue for it. I told you, Porsche, this one had the potential to run over. but John was on Twitter last night, and he asked for walkout songs ideas. So obviously, he opened up the floodgates. People are talking about Amy Winehouse Rehab, all kinds of stuff, But to me, I think the mentality that he needs to be in is Tupac, Me Against the World. That's where if he's really looking for a walkout song, that should be it. Because the way this has played out, almost every fighter's blaming you. All of the fans are blaming you. All of your rivals are coming at you on Twitter. Like, dude, what I was going to say about Daniel Cormier, John brings out the absolute worst in that man.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, Cormier is such a well-spoken, reasonable, almost sweet man.
Yes,
he is. And
when it comes to him,
so ignorant and like
he goes nuts, man. It's like the dude, he has this thing over him. It's like and I kind of think it has something to do with this, right? Daniel Cormier was bullied very severely as a kid. Like, like he doesn't even really get into it in specifics, but he said things like, I was bullied like you wouldn't believe. Right? I think that John reminds him of those guys. Yeah,
probably. And for John to be better than him, and quite frankly,
yes.
If it wasn't for John Jones, Daniel Cormier would arguably be the greatest of all time.
I don't think it's an argument.
Well, I say arguably because there's going to be a lot of, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva people out there. But
the thing of it is that Daniel
in that conversation, and the only reason he's not is because of John Jones.
I think people still put him in that conversation. The people who put more weight on John Jones's drug test, because I think those people put him in that conversation. I don't, for that reason that you mentioned, because you haven't beaten the guy. You faced a guy twice who I actually believe is the greatest of all time, and you lost.
So this goes back to the cartoony thing about steroids.
Yeah.
Listen, unless you in a Marvel comic, there ain't nothing that you could have given John Jones that he wouldn't have gotten arrested for that would have resulted in the beatdown that he put on Cormier in that second fight.
Well, I mean, you know what the funny thing of it was he didn't put a beat down on him for the whole fight. He was winning the fight, but he caught him.
Yeah.
And so, he got caught.
But here's the thing, and this goes back to the spacing thing, right? Cormier is so great at establishing this odd spacing where you can't really get him and he can get you in so many ways. And John Jones accepted that and demolished it.
Well, John is a master of space and distance.
Yes.
He is a master of space and time, and timing. He really is, man. He knows, and you can't teach anybody this.
No.
This is the same way that Kyrie Irving beats guys off the dribble and stuff.
Rhythm. He just got rhythm like a jazz musician.
And I see you, and I know exactly how close you are.
Yes.
And I know exactly from a timing standpoint what I need to do to meet you where you are. And I'll beat you to the punch every time.
Yep.
And the fact that my arms go forever only helps.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that my legs go forever only helps.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I don't really get tired.
Mm-hmm.
Because you very rarely see John breathing hard at the end of a fight.
It was just and that's why with the Gustafson fight, we're looking at it like, man, you must have really. Because he had Gustafson beat, and he just chose to lean on him.
he got pushed. He got pushed more. Like the only other time I've seen John close to losing was Vitor Belfort caught him in an armbar, and he dislocated John's elbow.
Yeah.
And John let his elbow get dislocated to spin out of the hold.
Which is crazy.
And then moments later tapped Vitor out.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude is insane.
It's insane. No, he's 5-star.
Yeah, I mean, he's
insane.
Yeah, he's insane.
Which is why it's such a shame that he can't keep it together. Although
he can't get out his own way.
The one thing and before we hop off this, I don't want to completely absolve him of it, because it's like if you weren't abusive in the first place,
exactly,
you wouldn't be in this situation.
Wouldn't be in this
and
situation.
It's all part of it. You don't get to ask for fairness.
You right.
Screw up. You just have to own up for whatever the consequences are. I hope that, you know, this is all true and that he's clean, because I want a fair fight. I want a great fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like redemption stories. If he's doing the right things, I want him to be rewarded for doing the right things. But he doesn't get to say, and he, to his credit, he apologized outright. He didn't make a bunch of excuses.
He didn't blame nobody else or anything like that.
Yeah, he accepted that responsibility. But that's just where we are.
Yeah,
you know? That's just where we are right now.
Yeah, it is, man. It's like if you're a husband that constantly cheats on your wife, and this one particular time the lady was actually flirting with you, and your wife is literally going off on you about it, you can't really get an attitude.
No. You guys, you wrong, but you have every right to be wrong.
Right. You can't really get an attitude. You just kind of got to take it and go like, babe, I really didn't do nothing this time. I swear, I really didn't. You got to be as humble as possible as you say, I really didn't do it that time.
Right.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. But let's
I'll be weak. I'm rather unique.